Nathaniel Hummel and Luke Goodish. Welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
Thank you for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's an honor. I can't believe to be on here. I'm on here.
Would you guys mind each introducing yourselves as specifically so the people on audio can pick who's who? And then also tell us just a bit about the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. I know I've really been enjoying it so far.
Thank you,
Take it away,
Nathaniel.
Luke.
I was gonna say you
All
take it away, sir.
right. I'm Nathaniel Hummel. Um, I guess kind of the long and short of it is I grew up on the East Coast. From a very early age, I got sucked into Westerns. I think that was kind of actually we were talking in the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast or the Discord about the Hardy Boys. I think that may have been my first kind of
Hmm.
introduction to this sort of like crime whole area. And then quickly after that, it was Louis L'Amour. And I remember I would just summers, winters, didn't matter what, I'd walk around my parents' house wearing cowboy boots, a flannel shirt and jeans, and a six shooter. It was good times. And then I found out about Indiana Jones, which I know is very near and dear to all of us here, and spiraled out of control. And now I love men's adventure fiction in all of its forms, especially pulps. I love noir. I love that high adventure pulp stuff. So, and that's something that's been really exciting for me working with Luke with the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast is diving into all of those really just incredible stories. And we have over 100 years of stories to choose and pick from. Even further than that, if you go back to like, I don't know, Ivanhoe and the stories of Robin
Hmm.
Hood, which have that kind of heart of swashbuckling, and Robin Hood was kind of like a gunslinger with the bows and arrows. That may be a hard
That's the
hill to
quote of the
defend.
episode is
Yeah,
Robin Hood was gunslingers with bows and arrows.
um, yeah, but that's me. I'm Nathaniel Hummel. You could take it away, Luke.
All right. Um, I'm Luke Goodish, and I write adventure novels. My latest novel is Vipers and Red Rocks. So if you like Louis L'Amour, it's a love letter to that. It's my blood-soaked love letter to the classic Western. And again, just like Nathaniel, I think finding these movies as a kid, that's where I got into it. Not reading was movies for me, and
Hmm.
seeing these larger than life characters like Alan Quartermain, um, and just having that wish fulfillment of, wow, I wish I could be that, and
Hmm.
learning to have these kind of heroic figures be my ideals and have that actually help me grow in my life has been really um, beneficial. And I wanted to bring that to you guys in my novels. And now Nathaniel has, come together with me to do this podcast, and it's been incredible being able to talk about this with him and then individuals like yourself, man. I watched your podcast when you had the hard case crime editor on there, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
subscribe right there. This is what I love, and to see people keeping it alive like yourself, it's awesome. So thank you for what you do.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I gotta piggyback off of that. That hard case crime editor podcast interview. It was Charles R. Guy, right?
Or die, yes.
All right, that
Oh.
was so good, man. Yeah, I was hooked in. It made me want to submit everything that I had to hard case crime. It's so good, so inspiring.
Seriously, I think the amazing thing is that basically started as two dudes, kind of like yourselves, just basically sitting around. I think they said that they started at like a bar or something. They're like, "Oh yeah, remember those paperback books? It'd be really cool if we could figure out how to do that." And then
Yeah,
literally that's how they started, and now it's like the premiere of that crime vintage fiction being republished today.
yeah, so good.
They do it better than anybody. Those covers are incredible.
I know.
It's so good. I
Um,
mean, you got some
oh, thank you.
competition right here with yours. As you put them next to each other, it holds its own. Look, I got a hard case crime here. Holds its own. That's you have a sick cover going.
Thank you. They're holding up copies of One Man's Treasure. You guys are a part of the exclusive Proofs Club. And just as a heads up to anyone listening or watching, my book will be available on September 3rd, 2024. Pre-order today. Link in the profile. One Man's Treasure, which you actually held up Easy Go, which is one of my favorite covers of
Mm-hmm.
the Hard Case Crime Collection, just because it has that great adventure feel and kind of
Absolutely.
uh, I also so when we were working on the design, so I had different artists come up with the cover, and then I told the designer putting the cover design together, this is kind of what I'm looking for. Hard Case Crime does a great job on this, kind of go with the same vibe, and then she did an amazing job. But to tie this back a little bit more, your guys' first episode was on Spencer Dutton, which I haven't seen. It's 1823,
1923.
1923, 1923. I like completely because I missed the whole Yellowstone thing, was completely caught off guard. And then I watched like a super cut of Spencer Dutton. I'm like, oh my goodness, can we just make this the series? I want to watch this because I love the men's adventure fiction, the Alan Quartermain of it all, which is why there's a few very, very, very small nods. There are a couple of times I refer to characters as dressed up as H. Rider Haggard, um,
Yeah.
second unit stuntmen, basically. And so when I found out that we did a whole series on the podcast leading up to Dial of Destiny. These are the inspirations of Indiana Jones. Now, gentlemen, you are joining me to discuss King Solomon's Mines 1985, which is one of the many Raiders clones that came out in the wake of the success of Indiana Jones. And my goodness, gentlemen, this is an incredible movie. Have either of you seen this film before the podcast?
Go ahead, Nathaniel. You can answer that one first.
I had not seen it. I think my only kind of time that I've ever had with King Solomon's Mines at all was from the great illustrated classics. I read
Mm.
that
Yes,
as a kid.
same. That was my first intro.
So good. Yeah, but I had not seen the movie.
For me, I when I got into Indiana Jones, for those who saw our episode on him, I'm a late comer to Indiana Jones, only the last 2 years, year and a half, something like that. And so once I watched it, I was like, well, I need everything that was ever Indiana Jones ever. So I started to look into the clones and got into High Road to China and different things like
Hmm.
that. And one of them was um, King Solomon's Mines. I don't think I saw the sequel, but I saw King Solomon's Mines, and I was kind of keen to pick that one as one of the first I watched because it's from Canon. And if anybody knows
Yes.
anything from Canon Productions, they're the king of the 80s. Do you know what I mean? I love their stuff.
The moment I didn't know it was a Canon Group movie before I picked it or before I sat down to watch it.
Yeah.
So I sat down to watch this, saw the Canon logo, and went, this is either going to be the absolute worst thing on earth or it's going to be the best. And those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
100%. That is Canon for you right there. There's a whole documentary on them too, if people are interested. They've got an incredible documentary about themselves.
Ooh, I
I
really
forget what
want to
it's
see
called,
that.
unfortunately, but if you Google like Canon documentary, you'll find it. It's fun.
That's awesome.
Okay, so let's kind of just dive in a bit to the plot here. So, first and foremost, major deviation. This movie is, even though the book was released in 1885, this movie came out 100 years later. So, kind of cool there. But it is not
Oh.
set in the same time period. This movie is set in World War One because we had to figure out how to get Germans in as the bad guy. But we can't
Right.
have Nazis because Indiana Jones said that.
That was yeah, that was confusing to me when he like the guy says at one point the German army will something something. I was like, wait a second, I didn't realize they were why aren't they Nazis? But you're right, it was World War One, so it was just like that whole adjacent thing where we're gonna do it without doing it.
Which I think was such a great choice for the movie, quite honestly, because like we've talked about before on this show, and you guys talked about on yours, that era, that World War One era, a little before and a little after, is like the height of the adventurer era. And especially since King Solomon's Mines is kind of like that original adventure idea that Indiana Jones is like the archetype of, it
Mm-hmm.
really does fit well. Just a couple of quick facts on the movie. It is stars Richard Chamberlain, who I have not seen anything else, Sharon Stone, who I have seen in many other things, um,
Yeah.
Including Magnum PI.
including,
She had
oh, that's
a
right.
really, really good episode. Or it may actually have been a two-parter. Phenomenal little episode of Magnum PI there. She was so good in that.
I see, and since Tom Selleck was supposed to be Indiana Jones, we get all of these
Oh, it's all
references
coming
sequentially. It's
together.
all coming together. John Rice Davies is also in this movie as one of the bad guys.
What?
Yeah.
I was so excited. I'm like, okay, John Rice Davies has the best lines in this entire movie, by the way. I think my favorite is when the like natives are running away and the German officer like yells at them in German. He's like, ah, yes, their incredible grasp of German, that will have them running right back.
And then is that when the elephants or whatever's chasing them come by too?
Yes.
So fun.
Okay, and so I looked up the Wikipedia like plot summary. The first like 40 minutes are two paragraphs, and then the last like 20 minutes is the subsequent. So just in quick brief, basically we start right off with things happening, which is a credit to this movie. It does not try to like drag you slowly into the movie. Instead, it is from the start. We don't have the money to make this movie, so we need to get going right away. And we have the dad, Professor Houston, who I'd love to think this was a John Huston, the director, like in joke, but it probably isn't. And he's being tortured by someone in brownface. And John Rice Davies, too, who I also think they have made more brown. And they have that's how we start. And then cut to jungle, Alan Quartermain, Sharon Stone. Her name's Jessie. I'll probably just keep calling her Sharon Stone,
Okay.
making their way through like 20 feet of jungle and then into the little city so that we can actually get the adventure rolling. And in like three scenes, they have set up Alan Quartermain was hired to take her to this city. She is looking for the Temple of Isis and she is looking for her father. Very efficient storytelling. Not good storytelling, but very efficient storytelling.
Yeah, they cut straight to the chase.
Absolutely. I mean, in the first, what, 5 minutes maybe, where he's like, you'll translate it. And he's like, no. And then that guy just gets spiked down. They're like, you'll translate it now. It's just like instantly into it and like, no, no waiting, no pacing issues there.
Yeah.
No. So this was my main thought as we're watching this movie because we just immediately get into is like they went, our favorite scene from Indiana Jones is the whole through the Cairo streets
Hmm.
scene. And so we're going to do that for like 25 minutes the moment the movie starts. Because that's essentially what we have are all these antics happening in this small little city as we get the plot moving, even though it's really moving really quick because John Rice Davies' character, the moment he hears Alan Quartermain's in town, he's like, ah, that man hates me. I must kill him.
And that's, oh, go ahead, Nathaniel. I'll
Um,
take you.
there was so many times when I was watching this and I was like, this is almost like shot for shot Indiana Jones happening right here. And it was, I mean, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right? So, I mean, it was entertaining. You cannot deny that, but maybe not for the right reasons.
Yeah,
Go
it's
ahead,
kind
Luke.
of, that's what I was gonna say as well, is that scene in particular strikes you as the perfect reason you called it an Indiana Jones clone or a Raiders clone is what they did with the carpets, just matching what they did with the
Mm-hmm.
baskets. Like that, yeah, that is almost like the most sneaky plagiarism of all time. Like they just changed just enough. They're like, well, we're gonna do the same exact thing, but move it around a little bit. And as a fan, like I said, when I was wanting more Indiana Jones, I didn't mind it. Yeah, like if you
Oh
get in the
yeah.
right mindset with this thing is super entertaining, super fun, and it's a okay.
Within the first, like we are not even finished with the city scene. I'm looking up, is there a Blu-ray collector's edition of this film? I desperately want to add it to my collection now.
Was there?
Uh, there was, but not a special edition, just one of
Ah,
those POD Blu-rays. I'm like, oh no, I want like a
okay.
Criterion edition. I want something
Yeah.
fancy for this piece of garbage. It has 8% on Rotten Tomatoes and it earns every percentage point.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I was honest. That's low. I feel like it deserves more. Don't give it 8%. Come on.
Well, the shocking thing is, so I watched it with my fiance. She and I watched Romancing the Stone together. She didn't really enjoy Romancing the Stone. Arguably better movie,
Mhm.
but not nearly as entertaining as this one.
I like this one
Yeah.
more. Have you
It
seen Romance in the Stone, Nathaniel?
I've seen most of it, but it was all in bits and pieces. But I did enjoy it. But I think I would agree that this one is more entertaining. I mean, this one's just like it floors it and it doesn't let up. And even when it's like the slower, I don't know if I want to say like plot developing scenes, although there are you could say that. It's still just so chock full of action. I don't know what you're supposed to do.
have you guys seen any of those like the old pulp serials that like Raiders of the Lost Ark, etc., were based on? Like the Old
I
Yeah.
Republic
so
serials?
fortunately no.
I've seen a handful of them. One of my favorite is Secret Service in Darkest Africa, and we actually talked about that on our episode about Indiana Jones. How it's like if you want what inspired Indiana Jones, go watch that. you're not going to get much in the way of plot. You're going to get a lot of really good fight scenes, a lot of crazy things happening. And every episode, they're like 15, 20 minutes, is going to end
Mhm.
with something crazy about to happen. And something crazy maybe even does happen. And then they retcon it immediately in the start of the next episode every single time. It's so good. I think I was saying to Luke, there's almost always a bar fight. There's
Mhm.
almost always a scene where somehow they get swords. No one had swords before the fight happened. All of
Mhm.
a sudden they have them. And then inevitably there's some sort of like rope hanging from the ceiling and a guy jumps on it and swings around and kicks like 8 people. It's so good.
Classic.
I feel like this is more true to those serials. Like Indiana Jones, I remember when we went through, we watched some of them on the show. Scott Hebert guest, he made the comment, Indiana Jones really is kind of a thin character that is elevated by the fact you have Harrison Ford playing him. I think
Yeah,
it's
that's a
fair
good point.
because he's kind of one-dimensional on the screen. They flesh him out really well in the books, but on screen, it's a lot of just Harrison Ford's charisma, and it's a fun story. This is what happens when you don't have Harrison Ford. You don't have a Steven Spielberg, and you have writers that are like, how many action beats can we fit into this? Because
All of them.
it just
What it
keeps
makes.
moving on the action and it hits those like when they get to the train because basically after they get out of the little town village thing then they're on the train trying to rescue the dad and on the train he like gets caught underneath the train and like has to crawl through. That is such an old pulp serial thing.
It was awesome too. I loved that scene in particular. It's probably my favorite scene in the movie. But you're right. I mean, me and Nathaniel talked about Spencer Dutton filling in a bunch of different tropes, big game hunting and man versus sea when they flip their tugboat, but it doesn't hold a candle next to this one. I mean, this has so many set pieces from the old pulps, just back to back to back to back, like you're saying. It's like I don't know, it's like a montage of the greatest of, right? It's the super cut version of just every pulp scenario you could put yourself into.
When also side comment, I think the moment I knew that this movie was going to be my favorite was when so Alan Quartermain and Jesse they confront the guy in the Temple of Isis who was one of the guys torturing her dad, and they're like, "Do you remember where he is?" And he's like, "No, I know nothing." And then Alan Quartermain holds a gun to his nose, and he's like, "My memory is coming back." That wouldn't be in a Spielberg movie, but it was definitely in this one.
Yeah, that was, I also was like, wow, they're not going to hold anything back for this. They're like, they did a really good job of leaning into the camp without acting like they were, which was what made it like there was slightly jarring scenes where you were like, I can't tell if this was meant to be campy or if they just didn't have the budget to not not make it this way.
That's the beauty of canon in general. Canon like embraced the cheese so hard they didn't even you didn't even know if they knew it was happening or not. You know what I mean? It was just perfect.
When Sharon Stone gets kidnapped for all of like 5 minutes, with the whole carpet scene that we were talking about. So first and foremost, Alan Quartermain, like sees person running with the carpet, and he chases him down, knocks him down. Carpet flips open. She's not there. He's like, sorry, wrong color, and then goes after the other carpet. When they take her to John Rice Davies, they unroll the carpet and she rolls out the carpet off the top of the roof through the grating and down into like a thing of vegetables and see John Rice Davies just look over like, damn it, you idiot.
So good.
Yeah, it was great.
It balances the comedy, like you said. I mean, it's like campy and cheesy, but it doesn't want to tell you that. Like it wants to keep you invested and enthralled, you
It's
know?
acting so serious for being very, very, very not.
Right.
It's
I
like
love that
Austin
tone.
Powers in a certain way. Like it I hear me out, guys. This is the Austin Powers of the Indiana Jones franchise.
Okay, I like that pitch. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good
I
pitch.
love the Austin Powers movies, so it doesn't lose any credibility with me with that.
I've actually never seen them, but
You should
from
get
what
on
I
that.
understand of them, I 100% agree to them.
So the Germans are also after King Solomon's mines, in a radical departure from the book. The Germans are looking for the King Solomon's mines to help fund, assuming World War One. They aren't actually really clear on many details, other than you get the impression John Rice Davies, bad guy Turk, wants King Solomon's mines, and so does the German army. They have the whole great scene through the train where Alan Quartermain basically tries rescuing the dad. And so, best moment, one of the best moments here. So they do that whole fight underneath the bottom of the train. Then he gets up and he opens the door with his gun, and then all these German soldiers are holding their rifles and ready to shoot him. And I'm like, wait, behind Alan Quartermain, you have the whole like sniper's nest of machine gunners that he was trying to avoid, and they're literally at his back. I love the fact you kept them in scene even rather than just take them out.
Right.
But then he like he just grabs like a trumpet and he starts
Yeah,
playing
something like
Camptown
that.
Girls.
Yeah, it was one of the best moments in the movie where he's like, "Got you guys. That was great. I was testing your skills," or whatever he says to him. I loved that. I thought that was even almost on par with an Indiana Jones moment. Like that was even.
That's the kind of
I
thing
like it.
Indy would do too.
Yeah, I loved that. It
Yeah,
was
that's a good call, Luke.
it was really funny. I love that scene. That whole train sequence, I think, has my favorite scenes because it has the under the train, that,
Hmm.
and then the upper echelon, like the top of
The
the
upper
train fight.
top fight that they do afterwards is really good and gripping too.
I
Like,
like
Yeah.
it.
okay, the rear projection when he does they do their version of the he's being dragged
Hmm.
scene on the
Uh-huh.
bottom, which it really doesn't look very good, but it looks bad in the good way where you're like, ah, yes, this is an 85 movie by Cannon Group. And
Right.
we have the close up on the actor's face, and then we see like him being dragged by on his feet, and he's clearly standing on wheels, but just phenomenal. Umbopa is a character that I haven't mentioned yet because his role in this movie is so small that I don't understand. I'm really curious who played that role. When I was looking through the credits, I actually think that might be one of the producers of the movie,
Wow.
Huh.
which
And he's
would surprise
he,
me.
yeah, he's just such a big character in the book. It's weird that he had such a different role in the movie. I mean, I understand it's not a perfect adaptation, right? But like that of a character is kind of a big deal.
But I watched this movie with my sister-in-law. She's visiting for a couple weeks, and she kept leaning over to me, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I honestly have no idea because it's so different from the book." Like, I was like, if you went by just the book, we would have maybe 10% of the movie. I don't know. I was like, I really don't know what's happening. But it's still so good. That was so I don't know if I was sad about Umbopo not being more involved
Hmm.
because it I don't know that is almost too substantive for how the plot is developed
True.
in that. So the underlying like plot line of actual King Solomon's Mines, the book, has a lot of weight to it, and it is a phenomenal
Hmm.
story. And this is also great, but I don't think you could ever look at them in the same lens and be like if this would be one of those movies that came out and everyone would be like, this is the worst video game movie adaptation of all time. This is the worst book adaptation of all time. If people looked at it in that light, but for what
Hmm.
it is, a really, I don't know if high quality is the word I want to use, but like a very like clearly imagined
Hmm.
kind of clone of Indiana Jones. It does scratch a lot of the itches you have for it.
Think it's got really good production value too for being what it is,
Yeah, that's
especially a
so true.
canon movie. Like the pyrotechnic budget was phenomenal. Things are blowing up all the time. I was really hoping towards the beginning part there seemed to be setting up that instead of a whip, like his thing was to light dynamite and throw it.
Yeah, that
And I
would
was
have been
like,
pretty cool.
I am on board with this.
He like
Uh,
takes he's like, "You mind if I smoke?" And then he just throws it.
dude, yeah, the dynamite had so much potential. That's a really good point. I that opening scene and when they first get the guy with the nose gun, I loved that whole entire sequence. And then like the perfect timing of the the dynamite going off right when the people walk in. I was like, wow, this was
I
they're
found the
actually thinking.
dynamite.
I was also so shocked by that. They just nuked that dude like that, no hesitation.
This is
I
the
was
'80s.
yeah. Well, everything had been kind of, I don't know, I don't think tame is the right word, but definitely nothing like that. And then all of a sudden, this guy's holding up dynamite right as it goes off. Crazy.
So when they finally rescue the dad, And I love the little gag where they're like beating him with one of those riding crops and they keep breaking the riding crops. And the German soldier's like, ah, you've broken my riding crop. I need another one. See what you've done. And so they rescue the dad. And the dad's like, I am dying. Leave me to die. Go find King Solomon's mines. Stop the Germans. This is my life's work. And the main question my fiance and I had at the end of the movie was, did he die? Like, did they just literally abandon him on a train to die?
Wow, I never thought about that.
I mean, it goes back to Nathaniel's point of like, you had no idea what's going on half the time. I don't think I registered that the Germans were the bad guys until like halfway through. And I was like, who are these? Who? I was just having too much fun with these action sequences.
Which, in fairness, I think is the attitude to have with this movie is just if you sit down and let yourself be entertained, this movie is so wildly entertaining because we start following the map of King Solomon's mines, which also we should just put out there. This is probably one of the funniest versions of like an adaptation. The version of it being a map is a little statue of a woman because in the book, the two mountains are called Sheba's breasts. So obviously, we are going to make that a statue of the Queen of Sheba so that we can follow the map to where the diamonds are.
They're visual learners.
I know I was not expecting them to like turn the statue over and be like, "This is the map," and like the boobies were the thing. I was like, "What is happening?" This movie is so good.
Yeah, that's what my wife normally isn't a big fan of movies like this, but my sister-in-law was like, I think you're gonna love this because it's just you just can't pin it down. And then she watched probably the last like 20 minutes, which is an interesting thing to jump in on.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
we've made it through, we start making it through like just going through the journey. Basically, it kind of follows this. Go
We
ahead.
got to talk about that airplane scene.
Yes.
That just went on and on and on in such a good way.
Okay, so this is what I wish was more in High Road to China is having more scenes like that. They have this moment where there are two planes and Jesse, Sharon Stone's character, can't figure out how to fly the plane. Helen Quartermain is holding on to the edge. He's holding on to the wing and he's like, grab the stick, the thing between your legs, move it, move it. And she says like, and the German on the other side is like talking to the audience. He's got this big mustache. He's like, I can play chicken. I will not blink. And he's like psyching himself up for this. And he's like, you will move. You will move. You will move. And then it gets closer and closer. He's like, I nine, nine, nine. And then he twists out of the way just at the right moment. And then he can't find them because somehow the other plane has gotten behind him, despite the fact he's the one that died around.
Don't think about it too much.
Much thought into that. Such a good scene though. I like you said, you'd think in High Road to China, the whole concept of it, there'd be much more of that. But this scene, I mean, it looked a little rough with the rear projection there in that scene. But the concept and the screen, like
Mhm.
whoever was the screenwriter writing that scene out, that was a great idea. If I read that in a book, I'd love it. Like you said, mixes that humor and the
Mhm.
intensity and honestly a good character moment as well. It was almost like a more improved Willie for people who don't like Willie in that
Mhm.
moment. Like you could have used her as like the same type of character in that
Okay,
role.
I that was one of the main things I thought of in this movie is she does a good job of being a better version of Willie.
I thought too. Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, it helps it's Sharon Stone. Like, it's one of
Yeah,
those things where it's like, there's a reason why some actors do become stars, is they have that movie star charisma, and she definitely does.
yeah,
And so even though she's playing this damsel in distress character, she's far more compelling.
way more. Yeah, I was wondering for anybody who might know Indiana Jones better than me, did Temple of Doom come out before or
Mhm.
after this?
It came
Like
out
straight up.
before. So yes, they did a hard rip off of Temple of
That's what
Doom.
I was thinking. I was like, either Temple of Doom stole from them, or this is like the double Raiders and Temple action of of clones here, just
The
towards that
the
second half.
yeah, so we have the whole airplane sequence. We then start meeting various tribes that are protecting the idol, and not the idol, the it's Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
It's just a
the
MacGuffin.
mines.
The mines. And the diamonds and the mines are so relevant to the story, it's easy to forget about them.
Yeah.
They meet the cannibals that we set up at the beginning of the movie. Good job, screenwriter. And there's a comically large pot.
So big.
Oh man,
It's so big.
I don't know how I forgot about this scene.
And he's like, "This is not my choice for a last meal."
And he's
Picks up the
holding like the
carrot.
vegetables.
Yeah, he has the carrot in his hand.
And again, in true like serial fashion, the solution to escape is that they like rock it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then they knock it all the way down and they roll out of there.
Mhm.
Which reminded me a little bit of the Temple of Doom scene when they take the floating raft on the
Yes.
ski ride for like 5 hours or something. Which I don't think I would have drawn that. Like, I remember watching that scene. I was like, this seems so familiar to me. And then when you just brought up Temple of Doom, I was like, oh, that's what it was. Because that's, I remember, don't they like go from the snow to the jungle just like
Yes.
that in
Yeah,
the
how does
raft?
that? I don't know how that happens.
All the way down the mountain in the little raft, which they
Yeah.
fell off an airplane with. Again, this is peak.
Yeah, we got to
Peak.
get Mythbusters to test that one. Looks
I
like it would
think
be pretty fun if
Mythbusters
it worked.
did.
Really?
There's a whole Indiana Jones episode that they
Oh yeah,
did,
I remember that.
and they did do I think they did the raft.
Nice.
And he
And
totally lived, right?
what was
He
that?
lived. He totally lived,
Oh,
right?
of course,
Of
yes.
course, you could
That
definitely do that.
he's Indiana Jones.
All right, that's what I was thinking. As long as it's Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, you're gonna stick the landing. You're fine.
The worst he'll do is break his leg. So
Yeah, exactly.
the thing rolls them around like a cement mixer, and I'm like, wow, so many broken bones, definitely contusion at this point. Subdermal hematoma, 100% there, and it comes to a stop. And what happens? But a lion emerges from the brush and walks up to the mouth of the giant pot. And what does Alan Quatermain, the mighty hunter, do? He starts making out with Sharon Stone.
I did find that moment very strange where they were like doing their like love scene that it would just cut back to this lion who was just kind of just standing there, and then back to them, and then the lion. Just all right.
Well, if there's one way to go, it's got to be making out with Sharon Stone.
True. Can't knock him for that.
I really was the perfect solution because they were trying to make the lion feel like the awkward third wheel
Make him leave.
and just
I
make
like
him
that.
leave from PDA.
Right? Just social anxiety. This line out of our faces.
You got to do what you got to do.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. Alan Quatermain is willing to do anything to survive the jungle. So Alan Quatermain and Sharon Stone make out. Now apparently they're in love because
Yeah.
of course they are. And then I'm trying to remember if this is the point where they meet the like tree people
Oh, the
or
upside
not.
down like
Yeah,
Ooh.
dude. I
which
think so.
this is the hardest cut I have felt in this entire movie, where I feel like there's actually a piece that was missing. So please do tell me if there was more to this than I saw. The version I saw of this, they literally are walking through the woods and all of a sudden are picked up by people hanging from the trees. Next scene is Sharon Stone sitting with like the patina of light and going, ah, wearing like a frilly bra. And that it literally went from that to that.
I saw the same one because I thought it was a dream sequence at first. I was like, what is it? Because the lighting looks weird. It's like kind of
Yes.
fuzzy. And I was like, is this a dream sequence? Did I miss something? And
I
then,
thought I was dreaming.
yeah, you thought you had missed something a little bit.
I thought it
I'm
was a
not
fever
bad.
dream. And the best part about that scene was like, I don't know what they were going for with the hanging upside down people, which was part of the problem because you could definitely see them like it wasn't like they were swinging. You could clearly see that they were being like dragged around. So that was also something that kind of like well, it's tough to say pulled me out of because I don't know if I was ever like pulled into this world that they've set up where like my willing suspension of disbelief is like very suspended so far. But even still, I was like, are they swinging? And if so, how do they catch the vines with their feet? And what's going on here?
My fiance's reaction literally was, they're drugged. Obviously, they're on drugs because the camera's fuzzy and they're just kind of like, ah.
Makes sense.
And the swinging vine people have decided to launder their shirts
As one does.
as one does. And can I just say this is like the smoothest Alan Quartermain has been in the entire movie when she gets handed her shirt back and he's like, "Well, you don't have to put it on." And I'm like, "This was a studio note. One of the producers wrote this in the script. It was like she doesn't have to put the shirt back on, and he read it as a line of dialogue. I am pretty certain that's what happened."
Be willing to bet some money on that one. Yeah, I think that scene like points for creativity, giving us something new, but execution not so much. I don't know. It didn't really, like I said, didn't stick the landing with that one. It was a little strange, especially with the abrupt cut not helping anything.
I'm so curious. I want to see like the director's cut of this movie.
Like, give
Well,
us
there
that.
had to be a passage of time, right? Like, because their clothes are already dry.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that was kind of what it is like they didn't want to waste time to like show time passing, so they just immediately cut to the time passage. Because like you said before, they started this thing pedal to the metal first thing first. So it doesn't really seem like them to be like, let's give the audience a little bit of a breather and then a little more of a breather. They're like, they get this one scene and that's all we can afford.
And of
Yeah,
course, now they admit that they love each other. And
mhm.
as one does in a movie like this, we've hit that's part of the script where by this page, the two main characters need to admit their love for one another. They've already snogged and they have zero charisma, but the chemistry is nowhere to be found. But their shirts are laundered and they're going to continue looking for King Solomon's mines. And just as they are leaving this area, what should pop up, but they step on a booby trap that lifts a very helpful full-size map statue for them to find.
Perfect.
Mhm. I
Right,
also love that these are supposed to be like the Hanging Tree people are guardians of the path to the mines, and they're just helping them through because that's what guardians
right.
always do.
Yeah, are
Don't Guardians just
famously
show you the
known for.
giant map? I don't that whole sequence threw me off, but it did when we had that, like you said, whether it was producers' notes or whatever it is to make us just to Nathaniel's point, like we don't have time for exposition or like slowing down. Absolutely not. Where's the next action scene? It felt this whole movie feels like what you and I talk about sometimes with Nathaniel of the old playing with your friends outside. You know what I mean? It just felt like scene after scene of like, oh, yeah, and then my character does this, and then like this. It just felt like they were doing that in live action with a huge budget with Sharon Stone, and it was fun. I love it for that. You know what I mean? It felt like a play date with a friend on the screen that you're watching.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
want
That's a
that
good
to
point.
be that should be on the like VHS box set. It's like a play date with a friend.
Right? And
Uh,
Sharon Stone.
and Sharon Stone. Okay, so fun fact about this movie: I don't know how accurate it is because IMDb trivia, but apparently they originally wanted Kathleen Turner from
Hmm.
Romancing the Stone to play the Sharon Stone character. And reportedly, the producer was like, "Get me that Stone woman."
I've heard
Because
that
Romancing the
story.
Stone, he
Yeah.
couldn't remember the name of the movie. And
Oh,
instead, they got Sharon Stone.
I think I've heard that same story. So if two people heard it, it's got to be true, right?
Yes, the internet's never wrong.
It's never lied to me once.
So now they're at the point where they have been now kidnapped by the next tribe of people, which really are probably the same extras, just, reshuffled around different native garb. And the main difference of this next group is that they are extremely hostile and they have these bodybuilders who are wearing the ghost like skull face.
yeah.
I was like, oh, you guys definitely went to the bodybuilding circuit as the guys are standing there literally like doing the poses, flexing anytime the camera's
Yeah.
on them.
So big. Yeah, they were just hit spread the lats every time they walked by and just beef kicks.
And it's very convincing that this small Richard Chamberlain can fight them. Love that part. They tie him up and dangle him above crocodiles. This was absolutely breathtaking because it was I think there were live crocodiles. Like, I'm so glad to know the crocodile budget was there. They keep like actually like cutting to the crocodiles in a very fast, quick cut between crocodiles and him being lowered. And then it's just as his head's about to dangle above them that magically he is able to untie himself. And then the act of untying himself allows him to somehow turn his trap into something he can swing off of and away to victory and freedom.
Just like the pulp cereals we were talking about earlier. There's always something to swing from, so the hero can kick like 8 people. You got to keep it in there.
And we
And
can't take
and the
away
bodybuilders stand like bowling pins, so you could just
just waiting for him to come by. They got their lats spread, ready to go. Big targets to get hit. But I think we can't take away from the thematic weight of this movie. It was the power of love that got him out because she
that's
said, "I
right.
love you," right when he absolutely burst out of the chain. So maybe we're giving the film less credit than it deserves.
Yeah, how could we have been so stupid to miss
So
that?
naive.
The main major themes of this movie coming to fruition
Right? It's such chemistry.
when and the evil lady sitting on the chair who looks like they have added multiple layers of plastic on top of her to make her look
It
very old and very terrifying.
almost just looks like mud. Like it doesn't even necessarily look like plastic. It looks like they're like, come over here. We got some mud for your face. Yeah, you look old. Get her on. That's her scene. Quick, get her over there.
That is Gagul from she is actually a character in the book who's like this evil witch lady who's been uh controlling the Kukuwana tribe. And these are supposed to be the
Yes.
Kukuwanas, which you also find
Super.
out through just very brief like one line from Umbopo.
Yeah. And she's a huge character in the book. So that was also, it was like, she did play a pretty big part in the last third of this movie, but at the same time, it didn't have the weight that it should have if we were going for a direct adaptation, which is like, and like you said, yeah, there's so many things that I'm watching and I'm like, I would have no idea what was going on if I never read the book. But it is like they are kind of getting to where they need to get, kind of, sort of. I mean, we're taking like a long, circuitous route, but we're getting there.
And they don't even like name check her until like we're already like 4 or 5 scenes later
Right.
that
I
they
the
actually give her a
only
name.
the only reason I knew her name was because I was watching it with subtitles and they did have her name in the little parentheses. But that's true. I don't think I even now that you say that, I don't even remember hearing her name at all.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I just know she came out and cackled a lot, and I really didn't like her character at all. And I was like, "This is that." Like you said, one thing about throwing you off, Nathaniel. That was the one scene that I think, if "take me out" is the term, it took me out of it. Like, if we could say that for this role, I didn't like that. I didn't like those shots of her just laughing. I don't like that. Whatever that is, it's freaking me out.
Whatever that is, please stop.
Yeah, keep that away from me.
This is where we start our Temple of Doom ripoff too. I'm so glad they didn't wait for the sequel. We're just immediately going for they did this in Temple of Doom. And also we should comment Umbopa has returned and he has like bared his chest and shown the snake thing, which that he is the rightful ruler of the Kukuanas. And this is when we also hear that they're called the Kukuanas. We did not know this until then.
For the first time.
For the first time. And he turns out to be their chief. Yay! Again, they build up this way better in the book. So, like, if you're wondering, believe me, this is a good reveal if you read the book. Sucks in
It
the film.
is, yeah, it's literally a huge reveal in the book. It's so cool. Yeah, go on. Back to the film.
And back to the film, so they get to the Temple of Doom ripoff and they kidnap our Willie Scott lookalike Sharon Stone, and they're going to feed her to the lava, or they're going to put like a lava crown on her head. It's
Yeah.
really unclear. The effects are really bad. We just know that she wants to do bad things to them, and the bodybuilders are like holding her hostage so that she's going to fall in.
Yeah, with like marshmallow skewers type of things,
Yeah,
like
oh,
really big
those
ones.
weird like cane things. They're just
And we should comment the entire time the Germans and John Rice Davies have been following them, but it's so non-essential to the plot other than to occasionally create explosions and
Yeah.
fights. It really doesn't matter. Other than John Rice Davies has choice dialogue, as noted earlier, he makes a comment about it's the German language that's going to get the natives to return, and then there's this elephant stampede. Temple of Doom ripoff. So they're gonna throw her in. Umbopa and Quartermain save Sharon Stone. They're descending into the bowels of the mines. There's these kind of like traps they have to walk through that they can just sidestep because they're very clearly marked with like red X's. Don't step here, and yet they do. And then they see this chamber, which again in the they actually borrowed an idea from the book, which I thought was kind of cool. So in the book, the former kings of the Kukuwana have been preserved in these like stalactites. And in the movie, they're like, oh, the queens have been preserved here. And I do think it's a little funny that all their queens are very white in this
Makes a
African
lot of sense.
village in the middle of nowhere. I'm not certain that this is actually, but the first one's supposed to be Queen of Sheba, and Sharon Stone looks so much like Queen of Sheba. And Umbopa is like, yes, the moment I saw you, I thought you looked like her. I'm like, dude, when did you see the Queen of Sheba here?
Yeah, and how many Sharon Stones have just disappeared into this land over the years because they all look like Sharon Stone.
They just yeah. So then Gagul shows up again. There's fight. The Germans have arrived. There are stones. John Rice Davies' character, before he even makes it into the mine, the German dude just shoots him. And I'm like, wow, you guys took a very bold move, killing off John Rice Davies before the
Yeah,
climactic end of this film. Oh, how
the
wrong I
literal
was.
I thought the same thing. I was like, this is probably the best actor in this movie, like the most successful actor in the film, and you're getting rid of him like with 30 minutes to go. What are you guys thinking?
I mean, yeah, was the budget that tight? They were like, okay, you have to die now. Like, I don't know what led to that decision, but you're right. I mean, the main bad guy just getting unceremoniously taken out by not the main character right before the finale is very weird.
But fear not,
Yeah.
because 3 scenes later, John Rice Davies returns. He's like a Turkish invention, and it's chainmail, which
Right.
exactly what stops bullets.
Right. Which was it's funny that that's they want to call that back to the
To the
book because in
book.
the book they have chainmail that stops knives and spears and everything. So it was very like a weird backhanded callback that like I don't know. It's just so funny to me that that was where they're like, oh, someone was like, I've got a great idea. Remember the chainmail from the book that we're like kind of basing this off of? And they're like, yeah, like John Reese Davies is was wearing it. Go ahead and shoot him. It'll be fine. It's gonna be perfect.
One of the people on set for sure was like, "This book, what?"
There's a book. I want to know what the guy like lifting his head out, the cocaine goes, wait, is that what this is?
He just, oh, shakes it off. Should I read this? Is this important?
So John Rice Davies confronts the German dude and he's like, eat the diamonds. And he's like, why? He's like, let me worry about that later when I take your corpse away.
That was
Very,
that was very good.
very intense as he's like, because we don't see him eat just one diamond. Like it would have been enough to eat one diamond. We cut to like the movie moving on. No, we see him like swallow 5 stones and he's like, eat.
Does he have diamonds on his head at this point? I feel like I remember seeing diamonds all over
Mhm.
someone's head, and I was like, what is that about?
So he fills his little pith helmet hat
Yeah.
and he puts it on his head, which, okay, so they have escaped with their diamonds. There's this whole scene where Sharon Stone and Al Quartermain are trapped in this room that then the ceiling starts descending and the
Oh
stalactites
yeah.
are going to crush them. Again, very Temple of Doom. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we can use this large slab. Puts up the large slab snaps in half because you clearly see it's 2x4. And then they manage to escape because German dude like lights dynamite and it explodes out like a well and they are able to get out. Very tragic. They're about to die. saved the last moment. I do like that this film does a good job of using the accident. So characters are in a death-defying situation, and it's random occurrence from someone else that changes the setup. This is actually something that Elmore Leonard does a lot in his books, and I think is a credit to these writers that they used it well, repeatedly, but well.
Yeah, they really did like the accident. I mean, that was the scene that I talked about in the beginning with the guy finding the dynamite is like another perfect example of that. Um, yeah, it's funny how too you can see like the basic DNA of King Solomon's mines with the underwater river too, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like sneak it like it's fair. It's like when you're drinking one of those like flavored seltzers and it has like a hint of lime and you like taste it and you're like, man, I really wish I just had like an actual lime in here. That's kind of how I felt the whole movie. I was like, man, we're like, there's so many things that happen that are just like, oh, this is almost King Solomon's mines, but instead it's, I don't know, King Solomon's MacGuffin. Like, I don't know what we're
So it's
watching anymore. um,
Yeah, I wonder what would happen if we got like a more like that cast, that set of writers, but they just wanted to
actually
be,
adapt it.
yeah, actually adapted, be close to the book. That would have been a 10 out of 10 right there from
I,
anybody, I think.
I think that this really, like, as much fun as we're having with this movie, it has the right elements to make a straight adaptation. I think that
Yeah.
the
yeah,
screenwriters could have done it, and they could have done it on a lean budget. It's just that's obviously not what they were going for.
right.
But just to wrap up the plot real quick, basically, John Rice Davies' character gets crushed
They kill
because
him
they
again.
kill him again.
And it's
And I'm
not
like,
Alan
okay,
Quartermain yet.
he hasn't seen Alan Corman yet,
I
who's his
can't
like
believe it.
lethal enemy. And you're like, and the German dude is like, you made me swallow the stones, but German laxatives are the best in the world.
I can't believe they slipped that in there.
Some of these lines, man, so good.
And this is where they do the walk out through the little pit area where by the water, and he's got his pit helmet on with the stones like on his head. And he
Yeah.
takes off the helmet, he's like, puts them in here because he holds the gun on them. And then like sets the gun aside and he's just holding the helmet with both hands. And Alan Quartermain and Sharon Stone are giving up their jewels. I'm like, he's not holding a gun on you anymore. Run. Run with the diamonds.
So silly.
But he has a better plan, obviously, to
Mhm.
put them on a stone, right? Like that's gonna get him.
He puts the diamonds on the stone, and Alan Quartermain's like, grab him yourself. He's also American, not English, which I think is also a radical departure for this. Anyway,
True.
he he forces him to step on the giant red stone, the one that sets off the booby trap. And then we get to see this giant animatronic hippo lunge out of the water and swallow up our German. And it that goes on for like a solid minute of watching.
Yeah.
I'm like, the producer's like, we spent so much money on that hippo. We're gonna get every shot.
Yeah, they
Absolutely.
loved the hippo. You got to use the hippo. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. It was genius.
And then just as they have to leave the diamonds because obviously the diamonds belong to the mountain, Umboppa says. And like any reasonable capitalist, they leave behind the diamonds. Not really.
Or do they?
Or do they? And as they are leaving, then the lava pit, everything starts shaking. Fire, explosions, lava, and who should return but John Rice Davies? Because you can't kill a Turk. And finally, he has his climactic fight with Alan Quartermain. And it's kind of anticlimactic. It goes on for a while, and they set John Rice Davies on fire. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow. I'm just sitting there in my chair going, this is still going. I think my body has like lost any sense of time or place and what is going on here now. That was
He
the
was
moment I
on
started to snap.
he was on fire for a while fighting, and that was shocking. I was like, okay, he's on fire. This is the end, and he was still just put him up, baby. And it's just, oh, okay. That's just your warm up, I guess. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Tough
I
guy.
think it's a good climax for the movie. I think it builds up to kind of what you said. You're like, I can't believe I'm still watching this thing. but not only for the fight scene, for the entire movie as well. But at this point, you got to finish it because you got to know what's going to happen. And also,
Exactly.
we have to have Alan Quartermain kills John Rice Davies. We got to have that at least once. So we
Mhm.
were committed.
And finally, he puts down John Rice Davies. And then he has to escape the lava pit. And everywhere he turns, there's fire. I'm like, well, the fire hasn't stopped you like for the last, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes. Why don't you just jump through? But instead, he has a better solution. He finds one of the giant marshmallow sticks, and he uses it to pole vault across the
Yeah.
lava and escapes. And he and Sharon Stone leave the land of the Kukuwana tribes. And, it just so happens that they have some diamonds. And this is that moment where he says, I thought you and your father should get something out of this. I'm like, wait, that's right. She had a dad. Is he dead?
That's
Yeah,
funny.
never answered that question. I haven't seen the sequel. Maybe they answer it there.
Maybe. So, gentlemen, what did you think of King Solomon's Mines? Like your overall, this was the main thing that after watching this incredible movie, which deserves to have rewatches at least once every 4 or 5 years. What are your thoughts on the film?
um, I think it was entertaining is definitely the word that comes to mind. You can't because even the stuff that doesn't necessarily land doesn't land in such a way that you're like able to laugh at it, right? Like that's
Hmm.
what they do a really good job by leaning into the camp a little bit. So there's like this the scene before the cool plane fight where she's driving that thing around the landing platform, the grass runway for like 5 minutes, and he's running around trying to catch it. I remember sitting there thinking like, why don't you just jump on it and fly the plane? But he's like ducking, and the Germans are coming, and she's like knocking him unconscious with the wings. I was like, wow, this is great. Like it's almost like if the Three Stooges made Indiana Jones, kind of is what like you kind of get that feeling where you're like, this is really good, and it's got enough of that like slapstick humor
Hmm.
that the things that you can't take seriously you can still enjoy. So I think like you said it. I don't know about every 4 to 5 years, maybe every 8 to 10 for me, but I know I will watch this again.
So Nathaniel, I think you are the odd man out here because I think I enjoyed it as much as Terrence. I think I have nothing negative to say about it. It was a perfect film, and that is my. I, the negative I have against this, all I'm of two minds when I see this. One mind is saying I'm kind of upset that we didn't get that closer adaptation. Now that I read the or listened to the audiobook, thanks to you guys and inspiration to do that, and it has a great story and like you said, thematically heavier, and then it wouldn't have gotten compared to Raiders, and like it wouldn't have even had to play that same game because it came first, really. I mean,
Hmm.
the novel came first, and there was a 1950s movie. Don't know how
Yep.
that is, but that stuff came first, and it could have been compared to that. So I'm of the mind of like that was a bad mistake making it that off a money grab. But I'm of the other mind where when we what we did make is a canon making an Indiana Jones film. So what am I supposed to not love that? Like it's 80s cheese and camp to the max mixed with Indiana Jones. So for me personally, like a guy who loves Chuck Norris movies,
Hmm.
I'm in. I'm in. I loved it.
The other thing I have to say is like this film is remarkably clean. Like it's a PG-13 movie and it has some violence in it, but there's virtually no cursing, very no nudity. It realistically, this is something like a 13-year-old T would have loved.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
That
I
gets
can.
back to what Luke was saying about it really is like it's just like they pulled a bunch of 13-year-olds who had just been playing outside with their friends and they're like, what is
What?
it you want from an action movie? And they're like, brother, let me tell you.
And I could probably show my kid this movie before I can show him Raiders because I put on
Yeah.
Raiders one morning when he was in the same room, and then immediately where like the skull comes out, like the
Mhm.
skeleton on the thing. I was like, well, okay, well, no, turn that off. But this
Yeah.
one, like you said, way cleaner, way more accessible to a kid like that.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to seeing the sequel at some point. Alan Quartermain and the Lost City of Gold will be tremendously entertaining to watch. I hope you gentlemen will join me in watching it when we get to it. But I really feel like this film, it's basically Raiders of the Lost Ark, take out the actual plot and the elevation and just let's stuff as much action in it. And it's so much fun. Like that's all I can say. This movie is fun. So you, gentle listener, viewer, if you want just a fun movie, King Solomon's Mines, 1985,
Absolutely.
this is worth it.
And do a
Yeah.
double feature. Read the book while you're doing it. Get a fun experience out of that.
And you know what? Nathaniel mentioned it. I just need to. The great illustrated classics were the hard case crimes of my youth
Yeah.
Fantastic.
because they had these sick, amazing illustrated covers that were these beautiful illustrations. And the King Solomon's Mine one, I remember watching it, reading as a kid. And that's
Hmm.
part of what got me into this whole vibe today. So
So sick.
thank you,
Yeah,
Great
it's
Illustrated
just
Classics.
I have to thank them for so many. I mean, all the classics. I read so much because of them. They are truly phenomenal pieces of art. It's like you said, yeah, the hard case crime of my youth. Well said.
That was a beautiful line. Yeah, I love that.
They can use it on when they do their like repub. Gentlemen, this has been a pleasure. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Um, well, you can check out the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we have a YouTube video that goes live. Uh, we we have fun conversations like this all the time. We love talking about this genre. Me personally, I have a web series on YouTube called The Adventures of Wanderers. I went to school for digital filmmaking, so the first season's a little rough because I was it was before I was finished school, but then the second season was actually done for my final project for school, and the third season has been kind of being worked through for the past couple years. When you don't have it to do for school, there's a little less time for me to be able to make it happen. But it's very fun. It follows the main character, Nate Colt, played by me, who is an international private investigator, and he gets in all sorts of crazy adventures, kind of like Indiana Jones, kind of like James Bond, kind of like Magnum PI.
Mhm.
I made him a private investigator because I feel like that gives you the opportunity to throw in any sort of genre. So there's treasure
Mhm.
hunting, there's more crime based stuff, and then there's more like secret agent type of vibes. So that's the passion project. I also have a short story about the same character on Luke's website, narrativecompass.com or narrative-compass.com, which is where you can find Luke's stuff. So you can take it away, Luke.
Yeah, narrative-compass.com is my website where I like to put not only my stories on there, but I like to put up other individual stories like Nathaniel and anybody who has like a pulp adventure story they want to share. Just I'm really open to them, and I love spreading those things out. So that's the website, and then on Instagram is where I'm most kind of active and like to share about movies I enjoy and things like that. That's at ls_author. So if you ever just want to chat movies, books, have a story you want on the site, talk to me there in the DMs. And that'll be where to find me. I appreciate you having us on, man. This was a really an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. And I'll be sure to link to all of that in the show notes. Gentlemen, have a great one.
You as well, sir.
Thank you.